Coming up next on KPBS Evening Edition, SDG&E agrees to a settlement over the 2007 wildfires.
At the same time, consumer groups are complaining about how state regulators are treating the utility.
And remember roller derby? It's here in San Diego, but with a different look.
KPBS Evening Edition starts now.
Hello, thanks for joining us. I'm Joanne Ferrian.
And I'm Dwayne Brown.
San Diego Gas and Electric has agreed to pay the county millions of dollars to settle a lawsuit over the 2007 wildfires. Two state investigations determined that SDG&E equipment started the Witch and Guajiro fires, which destroyed nearly 1,000 structures. In making the settlement, the utility is not admitting fault or liability. The company has agreed to pay $24.5 million. $15 million will go to the county's general fund. The rest will be put into a trust fund for Fire Safety Projects region.
California's Public Utilities Commission gave SDG&E the okay to raise rates to fund wildfire liability insurance. It's just another disappointment for watchdog groups who were hoping new PUC commissioners would mean a change. KPBS reporter Amitha Sharma joins us from the News Center. Amitha, why were consumer advocates expecting a policy change at the PUC?
Well, Dwayne, first a little background. Consumer groups have long complained that the PUC basically rubber-stamped whatever the power companies asked for, whether it was big projects that didn't necessarily serve customer needs or rate hikes. So this year, Governor Brown appointed 3 new members to the Public Utilities Commission, and the hope was that the policy direction of that commission would shift more toward consumers. And these consumer groups are now saying that simply didn't happen, that we continued to see the award of bonuses for energy conservation programs, which again consumer groups say were undeserved. These bonuses were undeserved, and SDG&E got the right to, again, pass on wildfire liability insurance costs onto consumers. Now, it should be said that SDG&E says, listen, these claims that the PUC is biased are simply wrong, that the PUC bases its decisions on the facts, and to suggest that the PUC is biased in any way is to impugn their intelligence, their integrity, and their due diligence.
So where do the consumer advocates go from here?
Well, these 3 new commissioners, even though they participated in decisions, they haven't actually been confirmed by the state legislature. So consumer advocates are saying if the public is unhappy with what the commission has done, then they should contact their state representatives and tell them not to vote for these new commissioners, to send a message that they're unhappy.
KPBS reporter Amitha Sharma.
San Diego's unemployment rate dropped last month to its lowest level in 2.5 years. The November jobless rate was 9.2%. In the past year, the county has added more than 26,000 jobs. The most job growth was in health services, followed by professional and business services, and leisure and hospitality. The unemployment rate also fell statewide to 11.3%.
Last night, we told you about plans for a new solar manufacturing plant in Rancho Bernardo. This morning, French company Soitec dedicated its North American headquarters here. KPBS Metro reporter Katie Orr was there. She joins us from the News Center. Katie, what will be produced at this new plant?
Dwayne, the plant will produce solar modules that will be used in larger solar projects. The modules are capable of producing up to 200 megawatts of electricity a year, which is enough to power about 75,000 homes. And most of the power will go into SDG&E's power grid. San Diego Mayor Jerry Sanders says there's no way for consumers to be directly involved just yet.
Once you get it to scale and you can actually start condensing it, and they work worldwide on these things, they're in Europe and here, then it probably will benefit consumers all the time now.
Sanders says San Diego was chosen for the plant because of its burgeoning solar industry.
Katie, you mentioned SDG&E. What's their role and how does that play into their renewable energy plans?
Well, SDG&E has a goal of getting a third of its energy from renewable sources by the year 2020, and this will help with that. But there is some controversy because SDG&E wants to change the way it bills solar customers, and costs could go up. But CEO Jesse Knight insists there are no new fees involved.
There are so many people coming on using solar that the full cost of people when they put in solar systems, when they leave the system, that there are costs left behind for people who don't have solar have to pick up. So we're having a dialogue on how to solve that problem, to spread those costs out so that they are socialized throughout the system.
Now, today the focus really was on jobs. This plant will create 450, and it's estimated about 1,000 more will be created indirectly.
KPBS Metro reporter Katie Orr.
A vote today clears the way for the South Bay Toll Road to move from private to public ownership at a cost of more than $341 million. The San Diego Association of Governments has approved buying the 10-mile-long roadway, which recently went bankrupt. Sandag says it plans to reduce the tolls to get more people to use the road. Eventually, the agency plans to eliminate tolls altogether. California is one of 9 states that will share a $500 million federal grant for early childhood education. State officials say the money will go toward the development of reporting systems that rate the quality of local child care programs. It's part of the Obama administration's Race to the Top competition.
A San Diego program honored by the White House for helping veterans celebrated a graduation today. Reboot is a 3-week workshop helping vets transition back into civilian life. It also helps reunite their families. Most of today's graduates describe it as life-changing. Former Navy sailor Carl Sutting says, like so many veterans, he felt lost until he came to Reboot 3 weeks ago. He's now been inspired to serve as a firefighter. Iris Ayala Swindell served 10 years in the Navy as a career counselor. She's nervous because her husband is getting out of the Navy next week, but Reboot has given her a new sense of purpose. 18 military vets, many with more than 20 years of service, like Lenore Langlis, have had to learn how to apply their military perseverance to civilian life.
In the military, they teach you selflessness. It's all about giving to the mission and the vision. And the biggest thing for me now that I'm stepping out into the civilian world, I bring my individual character, my diversity, and most of all, my skill level that will be seen as a benefit to not only a team, but to me coming on board their team.
More than 300 people have gone through the workshop, and today, Reboot received a $100,000 check from Bank of America to keep the program going.
This really helps us open up the floodgates a little bit more. Currently, we are booked for up to 15 months in terms of trying to get individuals in the workshop. So this is going to help us expand the program and offer this to more individuals that need it, especially those in the early out program that are really desperate for a solution.
When you leave, there's no structure to help you in your new life. And so what we're seeing here at Reboot is it's behavioral training to be able to help our vets do that transition back into the civilian world.
This was the 26th class to graduate from Reboot since it started about a year and a half ago.
A county pension fund employee is fired after raising concerns of undue risk to the county's $8 billion pension fund. Did he go too far by going to the media? And just how does the airport authority choose which concessions can operate at the airport? Several San Diego businesses are asking that question after losing contracts. My guests are Lori Weisberg, reporter with the San Diego Union Tribune, and Ricky Young, editor of the San Diego Union Tribune watchdog team. Thank you both for being here. Thanks. Ricky, let's start with our whistleblower story. Who is he, and what did he blow the whistle on?
Well, his name's Jeffrey Baker. He's a guy with years of experience in the pension industry. Before that, he worked at casinos, so he knows a little bit about risk. And his job was to monitor about 40% of our $8 billion county pension fund. That's where county employee retirements are saved. And he felt, he feels a need to safeguard that. And one of his jobs was to monitor about 40% of the fund, including U.S. Treasuries and high-yield bonds. And What he says he noticed in there was that the risk level was too high. Now, that's measured by taking a benchmark, like typically how would treasuries do, and then seeing how far off the benchmark your investments are. And his calculation was that they were about 3 times off that. And so he thought, oh, that's too much risk.
So he didn't go to your paper first. Who did he go to originally with his concerns?
He told his bosses. He told a guy in Texas named Lee Partridge, who's the portfolio strategist for. He's on a contract basis. He's the portfolio strategist for our pension fund, and he did not feel listened to. We have an email from Mr. Partridge telling him, "Don't you worry about that. I'll keep an eye on that." You know, and he felt, I guess, a little blown off, is what you would say, and he kept pressing it to other levels, and he feels like he was retaliated against for his persistence in raising this issue.
Now, I think some people would think there must be a law, right, that protects whistleblowers in California.
Well, there is, but it's very specific and limited, and it protects employees from retaliation for reporting a violation of law or regulation to a government agency. So I'm sorry to say there's no protection for reporting it to the media. Now, in Mr. Baker's case, he did report it to a government agency, first his employer, then the county, which is sort of an umbrella group, including the pension fund. And so he's suing, saying he was under those whistleblower laws. He's saying he deserves some protection there. A first brush of that was a county civil service report that sided with the pension fund and said they were okay to let him go. He's now getting a hearing on that at the Civil Service Commission, and that's what we've been covering this month. He and his attorney, Mike Aguirre, the old city attorney from San Diego, has also filed an action with the state labor officials.
So given the limitations of the law, as you point out, can he really hope to prevail?
Well, he has a number of arguments he's making. One of them is that under the Code of Ethics for CFAs, he's a chartered financial analyst, I forget what, CFAs. Part of their Code of Ethics requires that they come forward with stuff like this, or that they may need to take actions when they see something like this that would be counter to the policies or the desires of their employer, that they have a duty first to the people whose money they're investing, which in this case is 30,000 county employees.
So was he right in the end? Was there too much risk? In the end, did it result in a good action?
It's interesting you asked that. So in May, he filed this complaint saying that he'd found this risk to be 3 times what it was supposed to be. When we did the story at the time, they told us, well, you can't really measure the risk because you need 36 months of data, and we haven't had this fund that long. In June, their own consultants told them that, in fact, it was beyond the risk limits, and, in fact, a little more than Mr. Baker had said. And then in July, they adjusted the risk limits. So if you're not following the policy, change the policy. So I guess that would indicate that he was right. Now, they say all along they were following their own policies and they did nothing wrong. I need to make that clear. And therefore, they say he's not a whistleblower because there was nothing to blow the whistle on.
Well, we're going to keep following your reporting on this one, but move on to the other top story this week. You see them everywhere at Lindbergh Field. Concession stands selling food and drinks. A busy airport can be a lucrative location. So just how does a company win such a contract? Well, that's the big question now being asked by some of the losing companies after they discovered the paper trail leading to that decision was never kept. Now, Lori, this is your story. Okay, first of all, the concessions at the airport. Who decides who gets to be there?
Well, the airport authority does, and they've had a master concessionaire there for years, Host, and they're going to overhaul it so that there's multiple mass prime concessionaires there for the next 5 to 10 years. So they assembled a panel. They had a very rigorous process for people submitting very thorough bid proposals, but then when it got to the part of evaluating those proposals, they had this panel, and they were supposed to score them very numerous criteria, and there was a very specific scoring system, and then that scoring system in turn was used to rank these bidders. What happened, though, is that you can't find these scores anymore. They toss them, apparently, and you only are left with the rankings. So if you're a member of the public or one of the bidders, you can't see how the others fared.
How much are these contracts worth?
Well, cumulatively, for these 80 locations, about $1 billion in sales for the next 10 years to each concessionaire. Millions, tens of millions of dollars in in profit.
So how did these companies find out that these records were never kept?
They put in public records requests, as we did, and what came back was, it's odd that they gave you the scoring sheets, but they were, for the most part, blank.
Now,
So,
Ricky, as someone who deals a lot with public records requests, getting data, this is unusual, isn't it?
Well, as Lori Story pointed out, most airports, or at least the ones we talked to, do keep these sheets. Our own airport, when it did a parking contract, kept these sheets. It's, I think, just good government transparency, so that if someone has a question, they can go and see, okay, well, why didn't this person get the bid? For instance, they bid a little more and how much rent they'd be paying the airport. Why wouldn't you give it to them? You can't go find out. And that's a problem both for public accountability questions, but also for people who might want to file a complaint, which, as Lori Story said, a couple people wanted to, but they couldn't. They didn't have enough information to even file the complaint.
And your story took an interesting twist in terms of a conflict and who was on that panel.
yeah, I suppose you could argue it's a perceived conflict, but one of the panelists is a staff member, sits on a national advisory board with, or had sat on the national advisory board with executives from two of the companies that did win bids. So it's those potential conflicts or perceived conflicts that make you even more want to know, than how were each of these bidders scored. And again, you come up empty, and the airport authority just says, we decided we didn't want to keep them, and we didn't want to keep them, and that's pretty much the answer we got.
So now these companies who didn't win contracts, can they take any action?
Well, they did file formal protests. Those were turned down, and they expected them to be turned down. And their next step would have to be a complaint to the Federal Aviation Administration or a lawsuit. And they're still deciding what to do. They're weighing what to do. They haven't given up quite yet.
We haven't got a lot of time left, but obviously this means that the concessions are changing at the airport. What can people at home expect to see that's different in next year?
Well, the airport did want to have more local flavor, and they are going to get more local flavor. There's things like Phil's Barbecue, Stone Brewery, Saffron, Thai cuisine. So some of the familiar faces we've seen will be at the airport.
Lori Weisberg, Ricky Young, San Diego Union Tribune, thank you both so much for being here.
Thanks.
So what's in a name? When it's the name of a sports venue, exposure. That's why Qualcomm has a new look right now. We'll have the story coming up in just a moment. Plus, the new look of roller derby here in San Diego. This is KPBS Evening Edition.
I'm Judy Woodruff on the next News Hour, the latest Republican presidential debate in Iowa, plus Mark Shields and David Brooks. That's Friday on the PBS News Hour.
The American people have named PBS the most trusted source of news and public affairs.
For the 8th year in a row.
Trust.
The American people have spoken.
Thank you.
On Masterpiece Classic.
6 o'clock!
Step into Downton Abbey.
Downton is a great house, and the Crawleys are a great family.
Do you know the new heir? It's Robert's third cousin.
I thought Lady Mary was the heir.
Girls can't inherit.
Don't you care about Downton?
I've given my life to Downton.
I won't let them change me.
Why are you so against him?
He isn't one of us.
Welcome to Downton.
Downton Abbey on Masterpiece Classic.
Downton Abbey returns Sunday at 9 on KPBS. KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Irwin Jacobs and by
This might make you do a double take when you drive on the 15 near Mission Valley. San Diego's Qualcomm Stadium has gotten a new name, Snapdragon Stadium. But it's only temporary. It's an effort to raise awareness for the company's brand of mobile processors. The name Snapdragon will remain up for 10 days and 3 nationally televised events. Signs throughout the stadium have been temporarily replaced with the name just in time for the Charger game Sunday, next week's Poinsettia Bowl, and the Holiday Bowl on December 28th.
Seems like there's a smartphone app for just about everything these days, even for watching the pandas at the San Diego Zoo. The zoo now has a smartphone app that will let you watch the panda cam or the polar bears, and you can use it to get information about the different animals. So the next time you need to get an answer on the go about the Galapagos tortoise or other zoo residents, you can use the app. Zoo officials say it will give people greater access to the zoo when they're planning a visit.
San Diego is now home to a men's roller derby team.
KPBS arts reporter Angela Carone says the AfterShocks are part of a growing trend in roller derby.
Slow 'em down, Pat, slow 'em down. Roller derby may be known as a women's sport, but the San Diego AfterShocks are trying to change that. The city's first amateur men's roller derby team is building its roster of players, each with their own roller derby name.
I'm Nick X Fury. Soul Rider.
Electric Field, number 11.
Best looking guy on the team.
Kamikaze with an exclamation point.
I'm B-Stang, I'm 3158.
I'm Bobby Light.
Men's roller derby may not have the same appeal as women's, fewer short shorts and fishnets, but that hasn't stopped men's teams from popping up all over the country.
I think it's inevitable it's going to catch on. Whether it's going to be as big as women, I don't know. It's culturally a women's sport at this point.
There are over 500 women's teams in the U.S., while the number of men's teams is just shy of 70. The women's game is so popular, in 2009 it inspired a major studio movie directed by Drew Barrymore.
I think the new chapter in this is going to be for the guys. The guys' game is a little bit faster, it's a little bit stronger, a little more aggressive.
Sarah Lang is helping coach the AfterShocks. Lang also goes by Lady Diesel when she plays for the San Diego women's team, the Starlets.
Well, most guys have a contact sport background prior to roller derby. They've played football or, even basketball, soccer, so they're not scared of the contact.
I've had my nose busted, I've had a concussion and a broken rib, and I'm actually injured right now because I have a neck injury. And the most tiring thing I think in this sport is getting knocked down and repeatedly getting up.
The growing number of men's teams has sparked controversy and fears that men's roller derby will eventually overshadow the women's version.
And I kind of get that. It's the sort of, women have this niche they've carved out, they worked very hard to get it, and they don't want a situation where this becomes very popular, but people want to see the men because it's more fast-paced, it's more rough. I completely get that. But I just want to play the sport, so I hope there's a spot for us.
The guys come from all over. We're mostly from the 20 to 40 age range. So anybody, any age can come out and do this, and we'll teach you how to skate and teach you the rules and make sure you don't get yourself hurt.
The San Diego AfterShocks played their first home game earlier this month at Skate World in Linda Vista. They played the Phoenix Rattleskates. Roller derby rounds are called jams, and the person who racks up the points for a team is called the jammer.
The jammer is the person you probably want to be watching when you're a fan of the game. They'll have a star on their helmet, so you can tell who they are. I tell people they're kind of like running backs. A lot of people, if they know football, it's like the running back.
The AfterShocks had some pretty fast jammers, and it showed on the scoreboard. In the end, the AfterShocks' strong blocking skills and fast jammers were too much for the Rattleskates, and the AfterShocks got their first win, which was extra sweet since they played at home.
Final score was 163 to 93, so we won by a good margin, but the thing in derby, you can have a 20, 25-point jam like that, so no lead is really comfortable, so it was good that we played strong to the end.
That story from KPBS arts reporter Angela Carone.
San Diego AfterShocks will play their first full season of games in 2012.
We'll recap tonight's top stories in just a moment.
And we'll have your reactions to our talk yesterday with the Union Tribune's new owners.
This is KPBS Evening Edition.
How
Did Charles and Ray Eames become the most important husband and wife design team of the 20th century?
The Eames chair.
From furniture to filmmaking, they thought outside the box before anyone even knew there was a box.
The concept is mind-blowing.
Enjoy Eames on American Masters.
Monday at 10, only on KPBS.
I love KPBS because when I wake up in the morning and that radio station goes on, 89.5 goes on, I know that I am going to get information that I can trust, that I can respect, that I can value, and I know I'm getting the truth.
Tuesday at 10 on KPBS.
Welcome back to the Public Square on KPBS Evening Edition. Yesterday, we spoke with the new owner of the San Diego Union Tribune, Doug Manchester, and the paper's new CEO, John Lynch. The two appeared on both KPBS Midday and Evening Edition, and we had a lot of audience feedback on those interviews. Philosopher 3000 writes on KPBS.org, Manchester has confused public relations with journalism. He owns much of the city of San Diego, including the city council, and when our economy fails, he loses net worth. Alas, 2Y writes, my concern is that they are going to block any gay news and promote a religious-only agenda. Of course, you'll recall Manchester was a strong supporter of Proposition 8, the ballot measure banning same-sex marriage. Al Verna sent these comments after watching the interview. I feel we will get unending propaganda in favor of the stadium and get steamrolled from now until the vote next year. Well, if you missed it, you can see the interview at our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. And you can comment on that interview or any of the other stories by following us on Twitter, liking us on Facebook, and of course, you can always email me directly, jfarian@kpbs.org.
Recapping tonight's top story, San Diego Gas and Electric has agreed to pay $24.5 million to settle the county's lawsuit over the 2007 wildfires. The utility is not admitting any responsibility for the Witch or Gujito fires. Governor Brown visited San Diego today for the dedication of a new solar manufacturing plant in Rancho Bernardo. The plant is expected to create 450 new jobs. And San Diego's unemployment rate dropped last month to the lowest level since the spring of 2009. It's now down to 9.2%.
You can watch and comment on any of the stories you saw tonight on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for watching. Have a great evening.
The Weather Service says we're in for some strong gusty winds this weekend and snow in the mountains. We leave you with a look at the forecast.
Good night.